I am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. So here we are, dropping in together for another wild, adventurous journey together. And I'm kind of looking forward today. This is a little bit new, what we're going to play with today, something that we haven't actually tried before. And as I explained in my email announcement about the show, I'm actually preparing to leave for vacation. I live in Ohio, and it is cold as heck here. It's below zero again. We've had almost an entire month of well below, regular temperatures. It's snowing again. We are in the tundra, and I tend to get a little stir crazy and blue in February as it is. So my daughter and I are leaving next week, Monday, for a week to the Bahamas. And it's just a mother-daughter trip. We've never done that before, and we're super excited to get the heck out of Dodge. And you know how it is the week before vacation where, you kind of have that jittery energy of wanting to get where you're going and get on vacation. And then there are all of these like loose ends that you need to tend to. And so I was feeling that today as I was pondering what we might talk about. I was resisting, deepening into one topic or getting really somber and serious about something. And so as I was chatting with Viv about it, she said, why don't you just do a potpourri and answer some of these questions people have been asking and play a little bit, just kind of popcorn around and do a potpourri. So that felt really in alignment with my energy and what I'm wanting to explore and play with today. So a beautiful illustration of how aligning with our energy, aligning with what is, sometimes it's about shifting it to bring it into alignment. And sometimes it's about listening to it and following it, because there's so much magic in tending to the flow of what is already occurring for you. And especially as females, allowing that to be your guide. And, there's something very masculine about anytime we settle into a structure of this is what needs to happen. This is the way we've been doing the show, and this is what needs to happen on Wednesday, and all of that. So here we are shaking it up a bit and just playing in the space of just answering questions and seeing what happens. And I have a sense, because this is the way energy flows, that there may end up being some theme that presents itself as we, answer some questions and look at what's here. And, that's just the way that energy works. But we're not attached to that. So it might just be a potpourri, and that'll be cool too. So as we begin, I wanted to just share a quick announcement. If you have missed it, you may already be listening to us via the app. But if you're not, we have an app. There's a Wild Soul Medicine Radio app. It's different than the Spreaker app. So if you were listening through that, I found that one to be a little cumbersome to actually get to the show and find it. and to stay on it and so forth. And so we have an app just for our show only, which is super easy to get to. And it'll play all of the past episodes. You can listen right on your phone without having to download and move them over or any of that. So you can find us on the iTunes App Store. It's only for iPhones right now. We're working on the Android one. And you have to just type in Wild Soul Medicine. Wild Soul Medicine. Don't put in with or radio or anything else. Right now there's a little glitch that happens where it brings up a choice, but if you click that choice, it's not under that. So you have to follow these instructions. Do Wild Soul Medicine only. Ignore the thing that pops up, and then click the blue search button at the bottom, and that will actually bring up the app, and then you can download it. It's free. So so put that on your phone, and then you can tune in really easily. You can easily like the shows. You can chat with us over there. And also, you can chat with us at WSMRchat.com. www.WSMRchat.com. So if you happen to be in front of your computer, we're entertaining your questions over there too. So if you have a question that you would like for me to answer on the show today, go ahead and post it over there, and I'll check throughout the show and see what's grabbing me or what I have something to say about. So I probably won't be able to get to all of the questions that y'all have. And if I don't get to them, they may end up being an inspiration for a future show. So definitely let me know what is on your mind. And I think today we're going to do it a little different. So in the past, I've asked for your questions in the way of opening the door to providing some insight for you personally or coaching you. And today, I feel like I really just want to talk about stuff, so we may end up coaching some people, or it may just be where I'm looking energetically at whatever your questions are bringing up for me. So we'll just kind of play with that. And we've been receiving questions for these last several hours before the show began. And there's one that I would love to actually begin with that we'll see. I may have enough to say about this the whole show, but I'll see if I can wrap it up so that I can entertain many other questions as well. So this question is from Deborah, and it is about 50 Shades of Grey. And she asks, she says, her question is about the misalignment of women in their power related to 50 Shades of Grey. She says, so many of my friends loved the movie and or books, yet for anyone who has suffered violence at the hand of a partner, domestic or verbal or sexual abuse of any sort, it was a trigger for them. What is the best way to own my speaking up or coming out on a limb, so to speak, around sexuality and power for women? Around enough of the control, fellas, we are ready to share in the experience. Sex and control and feminine power and the old paradigm shifting away. Any coincidence this is coming out at this time of women rising? So thank you, Deborah, for inviting this discussion, because actually I have a lot to say about 50 Shades of Grey, and I can't believe I didn't think of actually just doing a show on it. But, maybe because I was feeling a little shy about it, because my take on it is a lot different than what you might expect as someone who is a stand for the empowerment of women. So let's talk. Let's talk about it. First of all, I want to begin by sharing that I too am a survivor of domestic violence. I was actually in a domestic violence relationship. It was a dating violence relationship from the age of 14 to 21. And it was fairly intense. It was actually intense the whole time, but it ended very intensely with him trying to kill me and then trying to kill himself, and a period of stalking after that. And it was a huge pivotal part of my growing up, my really formative years, and continued even as I went to college. He wasn't at college with me, but he stalked me from afar. And it was a really long process. He actually did eventually end up killing himself, but it wasn't for years later. So I have an intimate knowledge of domestic violence and the power dynamics between men and women. And And in general, I have a master's degree in social work. My early work was actually in the field of domestic violence. I worked at many different shelters. I created domestic violence intervention programs with the police department. And so I'm very steeped in all of those dynamics and that work. And in my practice now work with many, many women who are survivors of sexual abuse and domestic violence and all of that. So I say that because I want to be really clear where I'm coming from and that I know that of which I'm about to speak. And I actually read the 50 Shades of Grey books. I read all of them when they first came out. And I was very conflicted. So as I was reading them, I was turned on. I was excited. I was interested. I couldn't put them down. I couldn't wait for the next ones to come out. And then simultaneously, I would have all of these thoughts like, how can I be turned on by this when it's so anti to everything I stand for? When, like this is a fictional account, but if that was happening in the real world, I'd be telling the woman to run the other way. And like, what are you doing? And this doesn't seem safe and all of that. And so how do I reconcile that for myself? And so I actually did a lot of looking into it energetically at that time. I talked about it with some of my brilliant energy worker friends to see what they thought. And it was very much, at that time, I was kind of looking for somebody to tell me what I should believe about it, or what to do with these conflicting feelings. And I don't know that I ever really got a clear answer. It seemed like people were in one camp or the other, right? Like this is abusive and you shouldn't read it or support it, or, I'm turned on by it too. And people who aren't need to, expand their capacity, right? And so as the movie has come out, I've had a chance to really just kind of watch from afar the response to it. And, and again, I kind of noticed these kind of similar things where there's a whole lot of women that are turned on by it and they're going and they're having parties and they're using that as a way to get turned on in their own sex lives. And then there's this other camp that's more of the, like, I'm a stand for the empowerment of women and this is bullshit and let's not go to it and let's instead donate money to Now and things like that. And then there's a third camp, which I'm peripherally related to, which is, the very right wing, which my mother is a part. So she keeps it in front of me, which is, this is pornography and, you're going to hell and do not watch this filth. And, and to just sort of address that, that piece of the puzzle, I feel like, if you haven't read the book, I don't think you can really talk about it. I think with anything, we need to be in deep inquiry. So if you want to have an opinion about it, I think you need to read it so that you can know what is it really about. And, maybe you need to go watch the movie so you can see what you're talking about and decide from there rather than just what you think it might be. So that's always my first piece is let's have an experience with something first so that we can actually decide what it is for ourselves. So all of that preface to set up, here's what I've come to about it. I think it's a very complex issue. I do not think it's as simple as it's empowering of women or it's not empowering of women. It feels to me a little like this splitting of the camps, feels a little like what happened when women started working, and then there was and there still is the at-home moms versus the working moms, right? And it's like whichever way you're doing it wrong, or you're not the right kind of woman if you're not doing it this way, And so it was this lose-lose where women are really making each other wrong, and what we're really doing is still stifling our own freedom by participating in the patriarchy of wrongness, wrongness about female choice. And so as I feel into 50 Shades of Grey, to me, it also feels like that same dynamic of this is going to mean different things to different women. And I think we're missing the boat if we try to fit it into some category that, if you watch it, you somehow don't support women, because I think, what you're really doing there is actually not supporting the women who want to watch it. So you're doing the very thing. And this is the tricky thing about having opinions, because, they really are all steeped in judgment, and judgment is steeped in untruth. And so I become curious, like, well, then, is there any truth, or is it okay? And who would say it's okay? And what is it really, about at a deeper level? For me, it feels like, there's just a lot of opportunity. One of the things I say always is triggers are portals to freedom. So whatever your trigger is about the books and the movie, I think that's a great opportunity to go inward and see, what is that about for me? I could see multiple things. So let's just say you're in the camp that has a trigger about the books and movie. It would be a beautiful opportunity to look at what is still up for you around that. So if you were abused, like Deborah, like me, if you were abused and there's trigger here for you, what's that about? Does it, are you in a position of feeling like you need to save women from what you went through because no one saved you? Well, on the one hand, that's noble. On the other hand, it's not exactly clear. There's still a fear underneath all of that. So the clearer energy is if you could move into a more neutral space of serving, not saving, right? So when we're in saving mode, we become, there's a way that we can fight for a cause out of reaction and then end up creating exactly the thing we're trying to change, right? I did that for years as a warrior. I would, see the underdog. I would see the cause that needed championed, but I would go at it from a place of making it wrong or making the people who did it wrong, or being really, fervent and adamant about it. And all that really does is give energetic fuel to the thing you're not wanting, right? And so as I've grown and learned, like, what's a better way? Is there a way to actually change something that's not in alignment or not in truth? How do we go about doing that? What I've discovered is the best way to do that is to keep clearing your stuff. Clear it to the point where you don't actually have a trigger about it. And from there, you may say some things. You may actually, give a commentary about what it means for you, or how you used it to free yourself. But I don't think, from that clear space, it becomes less about what other people should do with that information, what they should do with their own lives and their own triggers or pleasures or desires, and more about you being fully in your own game, right? You tending to your own essence, you tending to what's in the way of you being free for yourself. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying that the movie is good or not good. I'm saying the invitation is for you to look and see what still has you hooked by it, one way or another. On the flip side of the coin, if let's say it's a guilty pleasure for you, right? There's portal for clearing in that. What's guilty about it, right? What has you liking something and then chastising yourself for liking it? How could you get free from that, right? Is, so much like, and what if you got free from that? What if you got free from the guilty and just had the pleasure? What if it opened a whole portal for you to be fully in your desire? The other piece that I find really fascinating is, if we look at this from the perspective of soul medicine paths, right? So if you've been listening to the show a while, you hear me talk about this all the time. So there are 5 soul medicine paths, and the soul medicine path really gives you the lens with which you make meaning for everything outside of you. And your core wounding is wrapped up in all of that. So, your core wounding of how and when your ego was formed in this lifetime is a really specific example of that. So there's the meta of, for some people, so like, let's say a warrior, which is my secondary soul medicine path. So a warrior is used to always being in control and dominating everything. And what can be a really turned on sort of fantasy for a warrior is having someone else be in control for once, right? Like actually being dominated. Because normally we're in relationships with men that we emasculate. right? And so there's a lot of turn on in watching a fantasy or a representation of where the woman is not in control, where she is told what to do by someone else, and where that results in pleasure for her, right? I actually have some friends who do a whole class on this mythology around our turn-ons being a framework or a representation of our wounding, right? And which, by the way, is why a lot of it's guilty pleasure, because a lot of our wounding is around like pain and pleasure and guilt and shame. And so those all sort of get, woven in there. So for a warrior, I don't see the harm. I mean, for me, it's fun to play with. And within my relationship, it's been fun for my husband and I to play with that because it's a role he's taking on. It's completely antithetical to who he is in real life. He's not Christian Grey. He's totally like, kind Braveheart, loving, beautiful, evolved man, right? And also sort of fun for, a night or a couple hours or whatever for him to play in a different role and me to play in a different role, right? And so, and would that be right for all warriors? That depends on how clear you are. It depends on if you have sexual abuse in your past that you haven't cleared, or if you're in the right relationship for you to clearly try on different roles and have that be safe, So again, I think it's very complex. And I guess the piece that I really want to encourage here for all of us, and I know, Deborah, that your question was more about how do you speak about it, given all of this, judgment and opinion that's around it, that could have you speak out and be chastised for it, and also wanting to be a stand for women who are abused. And so I would say, perhaps going inward to do more clearing before you speak out is what's actually called for. And I just think it's a beautiful opening. I love that the conversation has been brought forward. And I just think right now we haven't really been having the right conversation about it. It's been so surface of like, watch it or don't watch it, but not like, what is it bringing up in me? And what do I do with all of that? And letting all of it be okay. None of us are wrong. We're all just having our own experience. And at the end, all of it's illusion, right? All of it's illusion, that we can be harmed, that we can be abused, that a movie can, make us or break us. Like all of that is total minutia. And if any of that I just named still feels real to you or pisses you off, that I would say that it's not real, there's work to do. There's work to do. I totally have compassion for it. I do. And the freedom lies in letting go of all of those attachments so that you really do have full freedom to explore what turns you on, to speak your truth, to regain the essence that knows that I can't actually be harmed or diminished. And from that space, you can choose whether participating in bringing 50 Shades of Grey into your space actually serves you or doesn't serve you. So thank you, Deborah, for the question. I absolutely love the opportunity to get to address it, and happy to entertain dissenting viewpoints about that or questions that it brings up as you start to do your own work. And my request is just that if you have a dissenting view, that you do it from a place of personal responsibility, right? That you've done some inner work to look at what does it mean for you or bring up for you. So the place for us to continue that conversation would be in the tribe, which is free. It's on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/Wild Soul Medicine Radio Tribe. So you can join us over there as we deepen into a discussion about 50 Shades of Grey. And I do plan to see it. Actually, I was going to see it last weekend, and it just hasn't worked out timing-wise. So at some point, I will be seeing it with my husband. And I'll look forward to hearing what you think of it if you see it or don't see it. Either way, so good. And then one other last piece I want to say about that is... So, Deborah, I love the question, right? Like, do I think that there's any coincidence that this movie is coming out, this movie that some would say is about male domination, right as the rise of feminine is happening on the planet? And I say, like, in some ways, I get that. I get that on the surface, right? That's like, oh, there's this patriarchy thing that's surfacing, that's having all these women buy into men being in charge and having a fantasy about that. And I feel like the deeper cut is we could let the movie divide us. And that would be more of a shame, right? If the movie divides us, if the movie diminishes or degrades women who want it or like it or who are in it, that would be the shame. That would be patriarchy winning in my viewpoint. And so I feel like if we want to look at it as why is it coming out now with the rise of the feminine, because in our truest, deepest power, there's an opportunity here for us to own all of our expressions. And as women, sometimes we want to be powerful, and yes, we want to have our ways known and out in the front. And sometimes we want to be held, and we want to be dominated, and we want to have someone taking care of everything for us, right? And there's an opening for that. It's not perfect in the movie, but the edge that it's working is this divine masculine, right? So in divine masculine, the masculine actually does set the space and hold the container and, take care of the logistics so that the woman can be in her pleasure and in her creativity. And so there's an element of we could embrace that and say, great. And could he do that by also, letting her have her own thoughts and encouraging her to be even more of who she is. And so, as I say, it's not perfect how it's done, but there are elements of divine masculine in there. So I don't think we discard the whole thing. I think we stay in inquiry about what is this teaching us and what does it help us discern and refine, not making any of it wrong or labeling any of it as good or bad, but just yes, this, and maybe not that, Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay. So we have another question. This one's from Michelle. So the question here is, I wonder if you can speak about karma and fulfilling our destiny. I just became aware of some pretty crappy karma that is keeping me feeling abandoned, depositioned, out of power, out of sync, and basically near homelessness. How can I and we move forward without the confounds of such a debilitating context? And by the way, I never really bought into it much, but upon having a reading where someone opened my eyes to why my freaking life was so hard, I am starting to be a believer. He said that our karma starts to burn off in our 40s, but where I am right now, I am so lost and scared. I wonder if others are feeling this way too. Okay, so Michelle, thank you for asking that question. There's a lot that brings up for me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to it. So again, I just challenged the status quo of everything. So when I feel into and read the energy of karma as a thing, right? So the way that I energetically understand karma and the way that it, when I look at it energetically, the package of information that it is this idea that there's some footprint or energetic that you carry around with you that that's based on your past experiences and that you are powerless to do something about, right? That it's some force outside of you that is a force within your life. So it creates things or it prevents you from creating things. And it has a heavy suffering feeling to it to me, like shame and guilt, so it's like a heavy rock sort of on the back. And when I look into the energetic of is karma real? Is it actually a thing? I get a total no. I feel like, sometimes because, it's more of an Eastern philosophy. We believe that has more wisdom, but there's a lot of Eastern stuff that's also bullshit. For example, I love Buddhism. I resonate with lots of it. I do not resonate with life as suffering, which is a big tenet of what I understand about Buddhism. And so I just, what I do with all systems is I take what serves me. I have an experience with it, and then I discard what doesn't. So when I when I feel into this question of karma and the words that you've put around it, I also happen to know your soul medicine path because you and I have had a conversation before. So you're a primary great mother and a secondary warrior. And so, what that would look like, the soul medicine path, would be a life that's a lot of struggle. And until you've done the work on the soul path, on healing the wound of the path, you're going to keep getting the medicine of life is really hard and I have to struggle and I'm doing everything I can and nothing is working out. And that combination of paths also tends to look really stormy. So, we have a lot of capacity for creating, and then we also shoot ourselves in the foot. Like our biggest struggle is to get out of our own way. And so, all of the women that are on that same path have histories of brilliant creation and then, blowing it all up. Like, so for me, it was, lots of early success and making lots of money and then creating 3 businesses at once and having, 2 of them fail and going bankrupt and then moving right into another big house and having another business that I struggled really hard to get off the ground. And so what I say about this whole karma issue is, I call bullshit on it, especially, of course, so interesting, right? We're talking about 50 Shades of Grey, giving our power away to men, happens to be a male psychic who, or a reader who told you that, essentially you're going to have to wait it out until 40 when something happens and then it goes away. And I think that's lazy energy work. And in reality, you are always in the driver's seat of what you're creating in your space. It's all energy. If karma existed, it would just be energy, which would mean there's no energy that you don't have the power to move or shift or dance with or understand in it, and so that it serves you. The universe wants you to be happy. The universe wants you to have success, and you can have it tomorrow. And what it takes is addressing the energetics beneath it. And I think that's probably where karma came from is, this place where people didn't understand energy, thousands and thousands of years ago. Whoever came up with karma is kind of like what people used to think about germs is like, I don't know, people die when we go from the autopsy room, these medical students, this is an actual thing, like Dr. Semmelweis was his name. He was the first guy to come up with the idea of that there are germs, right? So he had these medical students who would be in the autopsy room doing autopsies on cadavers, and they would go right from there into delivering babies. And the babies were dying a lot, and the mothers were dying. And he got this wild theory, like there might be something unseen that happens between that room and that room that causes these deaths. And so, and at the time, what people thought, because they didn't know what this unseen force could be, so they just thought it was God. They thought it was the devil, or like she probably deserved it, or a little bit like karma, right? Like, oh, that must have been karma. She died. The baby died. She deserved it, or she asked for it, or in some past life, whatever. It's more religious at that time. So what happened is he started having people wash their hands between one room and the other, and then the baby started living, and the women started living, right? And he still didn't know why. He didn't have any idea why it was, other than whatever this washing thing is seems to work. And, and then later this germ theory evolved from it. And of course, now it's common knowledge. Of course, that's what we would do. And of course, that's what was happening. But at the time, people had to come up with something. And so I think karma is like that when, they couldn't understand, why am I still in struggle when I'm a good person, or when I'm doing the right things? They come up with this notion of karma, like it must be something we can't see that, we just have to suffer through. So I would like us to call bullshit on that as midwives of the new age, as powerful women pioneers, learning to use our energy for creation to really birth what's wanting to move through us. I haven't, in my experience, seen anything that we don't actually have the ability to play with and shift. So your invitation, darling, Michelle, and everyone listening, is to go inward and see, what is it in me and my system that is still a match to struggle? What is it in me that still has a heart closed to receiving? What is it in me that still believes that I deserve anything less than good, right? So when you start clearing those, things outside of you are going to start matching. And there's you don't have to sit in the waiting room waiting for something outside of you to cause that. You are in the driver's seat of it in this moment. And so thank you for asking that question. And of course, the question is like, oh, well, how will I go in and do that? And so I'm going to speak some more to that. And we're going to be offering a course in a couple months called Understanding Your Soul Medicine Path. In that course, we'll be talking about how to energetically shift the wounds of your path. And so stay tuned for that. We're actually working on that right now, and there will be lots more about it. But also, we've talked about it in past radio shows. So if you listen to where I've laser coached people, or times when I've, talked about those issues of like exchanging with life and receiving, those are all places you could start right now with healing what that dynamic looks like for you. Okay. So the next question fits in really perfectly from here, which is from Glenda. And Glenda says, Glenda was in a class where I was recently talking about what happened to shift me from what I was just talking about. All of this struggle, right? The struggle in my business and in my life, where I would create big things and then blow them up, right? Or I'd create something big and, make $100,000 and then have, some giant thing happen where I was basically just breaking even, and that went on for years and years and years. And as recently as, even last year, the shift, last year I made nearly $100,000 in my business. And I spent the entire year healing the core energetic of my soul path. And this year, I'm on track in my business to make easily $500,000, maybe more than that, maybe $750,000, right? Now, I say that not to put the money of, the God of money up on the mantle, okay? It's not about that. It's about showing you what can happen in your life when you heal these dynamics. And it's so funny, Michelle, because I used to do the same thing that you were talking about for years when I was trying to get magic school off the ground. And like, I knew this great work that needed to be offered in the world and that was wanting to move through me, but I was so not in my power around it. So I would get readings from people who actually work with energy. They don't even just, they're not just telling you like what the cards say, but like actually can move energy. And I would ask them, when will this class actually work? Like, when will my work be received by a wider audience? And the answers I always got back were, when are you going to be ready? Right? It's like, it's yours for the taking. When will you get aligned with what you're asking for? And it was so freaking frustrating because I wanted the answer to be outside of me. I wanted somebody to give me the date and time when I could get out of my own way. And of course, the only thing that can really happen is you got to step out of your own way, one step at a time. So Glenda's question is, I'd love to hear about your last year when you focused on receiving. What did that look like for you? What did you do in your meditations and outer actions as well? So this will be different for each soul medicine path because it depends on what your wound is. It depends on how you're exchanging with life. If you haven't listened to Money, the Untamed Conversation, that's a great one to go back and listen to multiple times because there's so much in there about how these paths work and particularly how they relate to you receiving money. And of course, money is, just an energy and it's reflective of every other energy. So at the core of my primary path, I'm a great mother, and the core energetic of that path is more energy out than in. This probably relates to a lot of you because there are many, many great mothers who tune into this show because like attracts like, naturally. So more energy out than in. So when I started to dive into that dynamic, I started noticing how every single system in my life was set up around that dynamic. So for example, in my primary relationship with my husband, I was doing all the evolutionary work. I was working harder at it than he was. In fact, he was doing no work at it. So I would do all this work to get better, to make, to create intimacy, to do whatever. And I would just get met with tune out, right? So I'm putting energy out, no energy in. Then I would, let's say in my business. So I'd put all this energy into creating a really cool program and do all of the bells and whistles you're supposed to do with online marketing. And then I'd have, 8 people sign up. So a lot of energy out, very little energy in. In the classes that I was offering, because, I still had a 6-figure a year business, which is, better than most online coaches. And so as those people were experiencing my work and they're showering me with gratitude and love and testimonials about how their life is changing, I couldn't let any of it in. I couldn't feel it. And then the very occasional complaint that I would receive from some passing person on Facebook who wasn't even in my class, I would focus on that and I would think about it and I would ruminate about it, right? So totally leaking the energy of all the good that was coming in. You see, so it was like everywhere. Same with my health. I've been struggling with my body and my health so long. And so I put a ton of energy into finding some practitioner and doing some really difficult diet and arranging my whole kitchen and my grocery shopping and all of that around it. And then it wouldn't work, So this is, Michelle, I feel like this is where you are in your path as well. Like a lot of energy out and not letting any of the fruits of that actually reach you. So this is where energy is the only way to actually address this, because from a mind perspective, of course, we want the things to work. We think we want love. We think we want, money. We think we want security. And yet, if that's not showing up in your life, that's just a reflection of what's happening in your energy system. So my energy system wasn't actually available for all of that. So what I played with for a year was I would just choose one thing at a time, and I would start looking at what in me needs to be cleared in order to allow an equal exchange of energy here, so that whatever I'm giving out, I'm receiving back in equal value. So there are lots and lots of energy exercises that I did. Like I had coaches. I did my own work in meditation. So like a really simple example would be in meditation, I would give some construct to my energetic system. So I would look into any moment. So let's say this morning I'm on the meditation pillow. I would look in and feel, what is my energy system like right now, right? Am I leaking energy? Am I holding energy? Is there a place where energy could even store up in me, right? In fact, we did some of this work when we did the Opening to Love show, which was just a week or two ago. I think it was last week, right? So these are all expressions of really the same dynamic. So let's say I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm totally like, I don't even have a bottom to a container where energy could store up in me, okay? When you recognize that in yourself, you're going to see it outside of you. Your bank account will look just like it, right? Because your bank account can't hold any money because you're not energetically set up to hold any energy, and money's energy, So then I would start imagining a construct. How could I create some kind of a container that could hold energy? What would that look like? Do I need to put a bottom on it? Do I need to build some walls for it? Can I upgrade it in some way? Can I make it like a beautiful gold container? And what would that look like? Then I would play with, where would energy come in? How could I let it actually come in? Does it need a spout? Does it need a funnel? Where would the energy come in from? Would it be from source? Would it be from other people? And so I would just work it in my imagination, which is how you also work it in your energy system. And so I would do that inner work. And then as I was going through my life, I would become conscious of tiny step-by-steps. So when somebody emailed me a testimonial, which happens really frequently, and usually I read it once and then I store it in my testimonial file, right? Like I barely let it in. So instead of doing that, I would get the testimonial and then I would sit with it and I would try to feel it. And I would open my heart and then I would see, could I let myself get emotionally touched by it? What would it feel like if it landed in the most tender place in my heart, right? So I would just spend time with it. I would do it with money. So there was a point where I was somehow I got like peripherally signed up in this MLM, and I wasn't actually selling anything for it, but the woman who signed me up sold some stuff, and then I got a check for $150, right? So I got the check, and I noticed my initial reaction was like, $150, that doesn't even pay my light bill, you know? And then I was like, wait a minute, but if I was going to let it in, right? And so I would like look at the check, and I would try to feel the vibration of it, and then I would hold it against my chest and see if I could feel gratitude for that's $150, right? Like that's a stack of ones. That would be really high. And what are all the things I could do with $150? And what does that mean from the universe, right? So it's like, it's changing the habits, changing the pattern. When a new client would sign up, celebrating, like actually dancing, going out to dinner about it, telling my family, having them celebrate with me. Do you know what I mean? So it was like small steps. And then the bigger arc was I was constantly excavating essence, because that is the portal to all freedom, to all success, to all aligned energetic exchange with life. So part of the energy work that I was doing, the ceremonies that I do, like all of the healing work that I do on myself with the help of beautiful practitioners and by myself, is designed to free what is not me. So as I let go of some old belief that I can't be visible, or let go of not good enough, or let go of, this wounding around being injured by people who disapprove of me, right? Like all of that, the more you get rid of that, the easier it becomes to have this more aligned energetic exchange. So I just committed to that. And it's so funny because what happens when I hear people talk about money, is we all want the quick fix. So we throw our last dollars at, programs and, things that we think are going to save us. And, there's this short term, like, sometimes it's nuts and bolts. Here's how you do this. Very occasionally there's a little bit of like a mindset thing that you might get. But in reality, we give up way too soon, and we're not working deeply enough to actually make the shift happen. So in my experience, if you just commit, if you commit for 2 months or 6 months or 1 year, like I'm just going to keep clearing whatever's here. Every modality that I introduce into my system, every meditation, every conversation, every book that I read, it's all going to be centered around putting myself in alignment with my energetic exchange with life, or it's all going to be in alignment with me fixing my money container. And then again, it's not about the money. It's who do you become on the way to allowing the money. So for me, really, at this point, the money is absolutely a secondary byproduct. Like everything that I'm doing is about me being fully aligned with my essence. In fact, I'm just in a conversation with a publishing company, an online publishing company that I will be joining forces with. And, they have the potential to, take my business very, very big, like hundreds of thousands of followers and listeners and, potentially millions of dollars a year. And as I was feeling into whether I wanted to do that, there's the ego part of me that's like, oh my gosh, I should just say yes to this. Why would I not say yes? Who doesn't need more money? And I couldn't find any resonance. It was just, it all felt hollow. And so I really had to go internal and be introspective about what's calling me here. And what I noticed is that essence really, truly is the queen of my experience. She makes the rules. And so I had a really important conversation with these potential partners and said, look, here's the thing. When I hear you talk about profit as your primary motive, I'm not sure we can be partners, because for me, essence is the goal, and it has to be the driving force of what I'm doing here. And my sense is that will result in profit. But if it doesn't, I'm not going to sell myself out for profit, right? And so a statement like that takes a lot of clearing. And it will be clearing throughout this process, right? Because there's a way I could use that statement to hide. There's a way that I could use that statement to stay small, or to find myself in struggle with my new partner, right? And so I will be doing all of that work because there's endless medicine in these things. There's never a finish line. And it felt really good to have arrived at that place of being so tuned in to my energetic exchange that it was like, oh, I can see where that would be off. So if I was to just agree to like, great, let's go make some money, that actually wouldn't feel like an equal energetic exchange because it doesn't feed my soul, right? And there's no amount of money that can actually replace that. So that is, sort of the short version of what I did for the year. And what I can say is I have never felt more clear, more happy, more peaceful and pleasurable. It really was about who I'm becoming on the way to aligning this energetic exchange with life. So Glenda, thank you for that question. It was fun to get to reflect on where that all came from and really the impact that you can have when you dive in at that level. So beautiful questions. Okay, let's see. Any other question we can answer really quickly? Yeah, one more question. This one's from Michelle. The question is, I have a question about quantum body mechanics and energetic weight release. How can I optimize my weight loss efforts energetically? So she's talking about wanting to, I happen to know Rochelle just had a baby. And so she's looking for how can she lose the baby weight, but, just in general, losing weight. And how does that relate to energy? So, it's very similar to what I was just speaking about with dealing with what's underlying the thing. What I have discovered is when people come to me because they want to lose weight but can't figure out why they haven't, I never address weight as the issue. Because in a way, it's kind of like karma, right? Like as soon as you start thinking there's something outside of you that needs fixing, you're missing what's actually calling you. So in my own experience as well, I usually always, I've always been a pretty medium weight, but at times I would maybe be 10 to 20 pounds heavier. And when I started energy school for the first time, I was on the higher end. It was right after my bankruptcy and I'd been stressed and I'd been eating and I was maybe 15 pounds overweight. And what I noticed is as I started clearing the energetic baggage that was in my subconscious, the weight just started coming off. I wasn't trying to lose weight. I wasn't even necessarily shifting what I was eating. I wasn't called to eat better or called to eat worse. It wasn't a thing. Same with the money, right? So in the past, money was king for me and everything I did was to make money. When I let go of that and just focused on freeing my essence, I happened to make money and I happened to lose weight. But all of those things were just aligning right behind they were a match of the clarity that was happening within me. So it's kind of like if you think of this energetic baggage as the sandbags, on the hot air balloon of yourself. And as you untie them and let go of them, what will happen on the outside is you will start to let go of energetic baggage that you don't actually need either. So that's kind of that's the deeply esoteric answer. And then is there a practical step to that? I think the same. You could be in your meditation and you could play with, where is there something in me that is related to the weight that I'm carrying? So you might start with what's my story about the weight that I'm carrying? What's my story? How would I feel if I lost it? How would I feel if I kept it? There's usually some stuff in there that you could trigger, and then you could start to use that as a portal for clearing. What stories am I telling myself about the weight? Because what happens is if we get some extra weight and then we become judgmental about it, then we're telling ourselves, so it's like the question you ask in your mind is, why am I still overweight? Why haven't I lost this baby weight? And what happens is your mind is like a Google, right? It's like it's a Google search engine. So it's going to answer whatever questions you ask it. So if you're asking, why am I still overweight? It's going to say like, oh, because you ate too much yesterday and because you don't have any willpower, right? And then you're going to start doing those things. But if you ask it a more empowering question, like, why is this baby weight just melting off? then your mind will start creating that. It'll start answering it. Like, oh, it's melting off because you haven't really been eating that much. Or, oh, you've been drinking a lot more water. Or, right, you'll start to fall in alignment with the questions that you're asking. So be mindful of how you're talking to yourself about weight if that's up on your radar screen. And then also always be looking for what is the deeper question that's not actually about weight. You know, what does weight represent for me? What is my story about it? How can I use this as a portal for clearing? Good. So thank you for that question, Rochelle. Awesome. So, gosh, that was so fun. We may do this more. I like answering your questions. And so just a reminder, because I'm on vacation next week, we will not be doing a live show next week, but you are welcome to catch up next week or anytime in between on any of the past shows we've done. I think we have 30 or 40 of them up there. And again, you can do it on the app. So if you missed that before, we have an app just for Wild Soul Medicine Radio. You can get it on the iTunes App Store. Android users, we are creating an app for you as we speak. We'll let you know when that is available. And we will return with a live show the following week, which will be Wednesday, March the 4th. So until then, my loves, thank you so much for joining us. And be good to yourselves. Bye for now.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God's sake. A revelation, for God's sake. An inspiration, for God's sake. Illumination, for God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake. For God's sake.